Okay, a memo from the Office of Management and Budget suggests 750,000 furloughed federal workers may not receive back pay. President Trump says it depends on the worker and some people, quote, and if some people, quote, really don't deserve to be taken care of. Now, I want to bring in CBS News political reporter Zach Hudak. Zach, thank you for joining us. President Trump also says he knows which federal programs he wants to eliminate permanently. So what exactly is at stake here?
The president has not shared what those programs are, but he's given us a lot of information that lets us infer what they might be. When he was talking about it yesterday, said the Democrats have handed him on a platter programs to cut. So he is very much signaling that he would be looking to cut programs that are Democratic initiatives or that help Democratic states. We've seen just over the past week him cut $7.5 billion in clean energy funding from all states, exclusively states that voted for Vice President Harris and not for him in the last election. So it's clear that he's going to be targeting things that affect Democrats. The other example we have just from the past week is the cut of $18 billion in infrastructure and transportation projects for New York. That was allocated to be spent in part on a train tunnel that would connect New York to New Jersey, and additionally $2 million for infrastructure projects in Chicago. So we don't know exactly where the president will turn for reductions in force and for other cuts, but we do know that he is using them as a tactic to add pressure to Democrats to try to bring this shutdown to an end, so we can be sure that he will not be targeting conservative-backed initiatives and instead targeting Democratic-backed ones.
Right. Okay, so let's stay on the president there, because he's now calling for Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker to be jailed for, quote, failing to protect ICE officers. What is behind that?
Well, the mayor of Chicago, Mayor Johnson, issued an executive order that does not allow any ICE operations to take place on on city property. So that is something that has somewhat been a detriment to the president's efforts to crack down on immigration there. The governor, Pritzker, has also been fighting the president in court to try to prevent these deployments in Chicago of the National Guard. So the president sees both of them as being obstructionists to his agenda. The reality is there's not a clear course of action for him to attempt to jail them, as he suggested. But look just today at James Comey. It would seem, just a month ago, like it was very unlikely that he would be indicted. And the president removed a U.S. attorney and replaced that U.S. attorney with one of his White House staffers and close aides in order to have someone there who was willing to indict the former FBI director. So for that reason, I don't think that we should rule out that the president might get a little bit creative and look for a way to do this. If there's one thing we've learned about this president, it's that you should take him at his word. So the way that he would do that is not clear, but I think we should be prepared for him to look for a way to do so.
And that is very true. If there is a way, it seems this president will find it. Zach Hudak, thank you so much for joining us today. The government shutdown has now stretched into its 8th day as Democrats and Republicans, they appear locked in their positions. The Senate is holding its next vote on dueling measures once again today. This after a vote on Monday where for a 5th time the bills fell short of the votes needed to pass. CBS News congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns is following the latest on Capitol Hill for us. Caitlin, good to see you once again today. It seems you're going to be there for a while as these votes happen over and over again and nothing positive comes out of them. But we are minutes away from another vote. So has any progress been made on bridging the gap and reopening the government?
Well, Mugo, I'm sorry to say, but I'm going to sound like a broken record here. The answer is no. I actually just talked to Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen. She's retiring. She is one of the more moderate Democrats and has been open to some of these potential discussions about coming to some kind of compromise. She just told me that she's going to vote no again on this measure coming up in a few minutes here because there has been no movement in the discussion. She said they haven't risen to the level level of official discussions with real concrete policy behind them. So as we stand right now, heading into this next vote, both sides remain how they have been for the past week, with Republicans saying we won't entertain these conversations about health care until the government reopens. Democrats saying that they won't vote to reopen the government unless there's a concrete policy involving health care. So we're in the same place that we have been. The question is, Mugo, as we've been talking about, whether this outside pressure begins to build, whether the lines and delays at airports, whether the shortage of workers at airports starts to kick in.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we know the shutdown is affecting air traffic controllers. So what kind of pressure is this putting on Congress? And how is the FAA handling all of this in the meantime?
Yeah, this is a really big deal, Mugo, because TSA workers have to go without pay. You've already seen airports have to close, Burbank, for example. And will we see more of this remains to be seen, and whether, that frustration building among passengers, among customers, starts to put pressure on lawmakers. But Mugo, the other deadline that I'm watching for is October 15th. That's next Wednesday, when members of the military, their paychecks will start to be delayed. They will not receive paychecks after October 15th. They will be paid back later, but they will stop receiving that income. And so does that create more of an incentive for these two sides to work together? The military is one of the few institutions in this country that enjoys bipartisan support and widely, obviously, support around the country. So does that pressure in that way start to build on these lawmakers? Some are already talking about potential ways to create some patchwork of funding for the military. We'll wait to see what that looks like. But again, that speaks to the larger issue here of there are real consequences for the inaction up here on Capitol Hill, and they are starting to hit people very profoundly in their wallets while they have to continue to work.
All right, CHB live on Capitol Hill for us today. Thank you so much.